Welcome to According to Sam, folks. This is episode 184. Happy Friday. I said in my last podcast that we were going to start talking about the migration issue, the border, and I was going to go over this Senate bill, this bipartisan Senate bill that had been released to the public on the day of my last show. I guess that was on Monday, or on the day before, the night before they released it. And we were going to talk about that today, but that bill is dead. And we'll still talk about the migration issue, but I want to get into a deeper issue, because the migration issue and this discussion about doing something about the border, the only reason that Congress was talking about that is because they want to send a bunch of money to Ukraine. So Ukraine is where their priority is. And I'm going to explain to you how the border came part of the discussion about their priority, which is Ukraine. When I'm done today, you should have no doubt that their priority is Ukraine, but the only way that they could get their priorities done is to include the border discussion into the discussion about their priorities. And that bill died, and a new bill has been passed by the Senate. Well, it has been passed out of committee, and they're going to start debating on it. There's no chance that it won't pass for $95 billion. And there's not a single thing in this bill for the United States and the United States people. Everything in this bill goes to foreign countries. It's $95 billion. You're getting ready to pass this in the Senate. And they took the border stuff out, but because the border stuff wasn't a priority, the border stuff was just a mechanism to get them their priority. I'll go over all of that in this podcast, a bunch of other stuff that I want to talk about in this podcast. I want to start with this clip. This is a clip of The View yesterday. Chris Christie was on The View, and they get into this discussion about Joe Biden, and this clip is just going to it's going to be rocket fuel for this podcast. I have a great podcast for you, and it all starts here with this clip. I want you to take a listen to this discussion that the women on The View had with Chris Christie, and we'll discuss it more probably as the clip is going on and after the clip as well.
I want to go back to Biden for a second.
Okay,
so let me just say that the economy and jobs report keeps exceeding expectations right now. People should know this.
Exceeding expectations. This is what I said, probably, because I'm going to have to stop it. There's no way that I'm going to be able to get through this whole thing without stopping. This guy's record is what they're telling you is exceeding expectations. This Joe Biden's record right now is stellar, people. I mean, she's 100% right. Everything that she's going to say here about Joe Biden's record is 100% right. He's polling at 37%, but everything she's saying here is absolutely right about his record. It is stellar and exceeding expectations.
I want to go back to Biden for a second.
Okay,
so let me just say that the economy and jobs report keeps exceeding expectations right now. People should know this. Stock market at an all-time high, which a lot of people, your money is in the stock market, whether you know it or not. It's in money markets if you're working and you're investing. It's not just rich people. It's everybody. He has expanded health care benefits. He lowered the cost of insulin, I know, for seniors.
Killing it.
Student loan debt.
Right? What?
Student loans.
Student loan debt.
Student
He
loan
got
debt.
rid of that,
Killing
a lot
it.
of it.
Killing it.
But the current GOP is focused on impeaching Homeland Security guy, Mayorkas, who did not rise to crimes and misdemeanors, and they're talking about impeaching him. That's how lame they are.
Wasted millions.
They wasted millions of tax dollars on their Hunter Biden obsession. So let me ask you something. Now, I just told you my age. A woman never tells her age. A woman who tells her age will tell you anything. Well, that's me.
So I can't wait to get off the air. That would be really great.
I turned 81 in October. Joe Biden is exactly my age.
Right.
I don't see this obsession with his age when all of this is being accomplished in this country. Tell me why that's an issue.
It's an issue for a few reasons. First is that if Joe Biden had the ratings at 81 that you have,
37%. 37% is what he's polling at. 37%. And he's been polling at between 37 and 40% for over 2 years now. Almost 2 years at least. It's definitely been over a year is where his approval rating is, okay? He's killing it though. Killing it. Stock market, jobs, economy. I mean, just name it. This guy's killing it.
That if Joe Biden had the ratings at 81 that you have, it wouldn't be a problem. But 37% approval rating in the country. And the reason for that is all those things you just talked about, which are factually true, he can't sell it. He's not selling it. He can't sell it. And it's not that Joe Biden never could sell it. I've known Joe Biden for 40 years. He was a really good, effective politician. He isn't anymore. He is not effective at selling it.
He's a manager of the country.
No, but Joy,
he manages the country.
Being president is more than just that. It's also convincing people.
Selling it.
It's convincing people that what you're doing makes sense. I know you can't take it.
You said you were in love with him this morning during the hot topics.
With Christy.
But it is the truth. Like, look, and so here's Alyssa saying she's concerned about whether Biden can beat Trump, and there are people who are concerned about that. Given that record, there shouldn't be.
I just want to say this too. Stop it, because there's a lot of people that think that Joe Biden's not going to be the nominee and that he's going to be replaced in Chicago at the convention, and that may very well happen. Chicago is probably going to be in August. So we're 6 months away. Who knows what shape Biden's going to be in 6 months? But there's a lot of people who don't see what everybody else see, who are like Joy Behar here and who want him to run, who think that he is the best candidate for them. So, so I don't see how they replace this guy. I really don't, but listen to a little bit more here.
And so
we have to be realistic.
Here's Alyssa saying she's concerned about whether Biden can beat Trump. And there are people who are concerned about that. Given that record, there shouldn't be any concern about it. The reason is that people look at him and they say, is he really up to it? Can he really do it? And can he not only do it today, but we're giving him a 4-year contract to go until he's 86.
But when you compare him to Trump, the guy has all these smart people around him. Trump will have every idiot in the country in his administration.
But he's saying that the fear is being unable to convince the public.
Yes, but here's the thing about the public.
The fear is not being able to convince the public. And then watch what Whoopi Goldberg says about you, Joe Smo Public.
To convince the public.
Yes, but here's the thing about the public. The public, as we know, is quite fickle. The public will go with whatever poll you say or whatever poll you say. Polls come and go. What isn't happening is not that they can't sell it. It's that the voice, like they should be here and on MSNBC the way the Republicans are on Fox every 4 seconds.
Right. Yeah.
We don't have the mouthpiece because we don't have the.
We don't have the mouthpiece. Whoopi Goldberg just said on ABC Disney on her afternoon program that we do not have the mouthpiece. We don't have the mouthpiece, is what she says. Very interesting.
It's like they should be here and on MSNBC the way the Republicans are on Fox every 4 seconds.
Right. Yeah.
We don't have in part, we don't have the mouthpiece because we don't have the time because we actually got to get stuff done.
We don't have the mouthpiece because we don't have the time because we have to get stuff done. And she's complaining that it's not that the White House can't sell all of their wins. They're killing it. You know, economy's great, booming. Everything's great. You got insulin for seniors. Got what else they do? Student loans, which he hadn't done student loans. I don't even know why they take credit for that. But got tons of bipartisan legislation done, like the Infrastructure Act, and they got gun control. They got some gun control done. They got guys killing it. Got a stellar record. And Chris Christie says that you can't sell it. And Whoopi Goldberg says we don't have the mouthpiece to sell it. You know, we don't have the exposure, as she's there on ABC Disney saying that they should be here talking. All right, so the Super Bowl is on Sunday. And there has been a tradition that goes back to the Obama administration in his first term, I believe, and it's just like a friendly little interview before the big game on the Super Bowl. You know, Obama did it, Trump did it. Just a friendly little sit down with whatever network is airing the Super Bowl. You know, they're expecting 35 million people to watch the Super Bowl. I mean, this is an interview that comes on right before the Super Bowl. Talking about selling it. We're talking about selling it, people. This is the interview that the president of the United States has done with whatever network is airing the Super Bowl, going back to the Obama administration. And Joe Biden, he refused to sit down 2 years in a row. He's refused to sit down and do an interview. He refused last year. The Super Bowl was aired by Fox last year. So, I mean, it's understandable. He was afraid of Bret Baier. Okay, Bret Baier, spooky. Bret Baier, spooky. Couldn't sit down with Bret Baier. We get it. But this year, we're in an election year. We're talking about selling it. Guy's got a stellar record, killing it. You refuse to sit down with CBS News? Are you serious, Whoopi Goldberg, when you said that you guys don't have a mouthpiece, that he can't sell it, that he's afraid to sit down with CBS News? This is so what's going on here? What is going on here, people? And yesterday, the answer to that question came out. What is going on here? Because the special counsel that was looking into the documents that Joe Biden kept in his garage and classified documents that he kept after he was vice president, had classified documents at his office at Penn State, in his garage, at his house, next to his Corvette. And the special counsel came out with his report yesterday, and he told us why Joe Biden will not sit down for an interview before the Super Bowl in an election year when you're talking about selling your stellar record to an audience of 30 million people. The special counsel told us why Joe Biden is not able to sit down for an interview with CBS News. And it's quite interesting. Take a listen to this clip.
President Joe Biden willfully retained classified information, according to a scathing report from special counsel Robert Hur, but the president will not face criminal charges. The report says prosecutors would not be able to prove, they don't think, that Biden intended to break the law. But the reason behind that is interesting. The report also contains a concerning assessment of President Biden's faculties and his memory. Investigators finding his, quote, memory was significantly limited in interviews they conducted. They concluded it would be difficult to get a jury to convict a, quote, sympathetic, well-meaning elderly man with a poor memory, unquote. And this from the report: Biden did not remember when he was vice president, forgetting on the first day of the interview when his term ended. Quote, if it was 2013, when did I stop being vice president? Unquote. And forgetting on the second day of the interview when his term began. Quote, in 2009, am I still vice president? Unquote. He did not remember, even within several years, the report says, when his son Beau died.
So the special counsel, he tells us exactly why Joe Biden is not doing an interview before the Super Bowl and selling all of his wins to an audience between 35 and 40 million people. 30 million people at a minimum if he did the interview before the Super Bowl. Now we understand. And even if you didn't understand after reading this report from the special counsel, then later yesterday evening, Joe Biden comes out, and he had already spoke earlier in the day, and it was aired live on most networks. He was at the DNC. He spoke earlier yesterday after the report had come out. He addressed the report. He distinguished himself between Donald Trump and the documents case against Donald Trump and his case. He had already discussed all that, but then he wanted to come out on prime time. I have no idea whose idea this was. It was most likely his, because from what I read, he was angry at some of the verbiage in the report. And then after the report came out, this was all anyone was talking about. It had overshadowed the facts of the case, that he's not being indicted, the difference between he and Trump. All of that was overshadowed by the questions about Joe Biden's memory and that he's too old to be prosecuted. So he comes out angry yesterday evening, and then he shows us. So first, the special counsel tells us in the report why Joe Biden is not doing an interview before the Super Bowl. But then Joe Biden comes out later yesterday evening, and he shows us for himself why he's not doing an interview before the Super Bowl. And if you didn't see it, take a look at this.
What I would have done is staff was doing. It goes in and points out things that appeared in my garage, things that came out of my home, things that were moved not by me, but my staff.
Not by me, but by staff. Not by me, but my staff. So he's throwing his staff under the bus.
That came out of my home, things that were moved not by me, but my staff. Mr. President,
for months when you were asked about your age, you would respond with the words, watch me. Many American people have been watching, and they have expressed concerns about your age.
That is your judgment. That is your judgment. That is not the judgment of the press.
They express concerns about
the judgment of the press.
They say that you are too old. Mr. President, in December, you told me that you believe there are many other Democrats who could defeat Donald Trump. So why does it have to be you now? What is your answer to that question?
Because I'm the most qualified person in this country to be president of the United States.
Dude, this guy, if this guy's the most qualified person in this country to be president of the United States, we're in a lot of trouble if what he said is true. But it's not true. He lies all the time. So anyway, that was a complete mess. And this morning, the the cover of the New York Post, because this is a quote from the report, elderly man with poor memory. So anyway, let's get into talking about we'll talk about the border bill a little bit, because as I was telling you, the border bill is not the priority. That's not the priority at all. And the only reason that they added anything about the border into this Senate bill that they were trying to get passed, which is dead now, is because they wanted money for Ukraine. Ukraine is the priority. Let me show you this. This was a meme that was going around, and it's pretty funny because Joe Biden gave a speech, I guess, on Tuesday, where he blames Trump for the crisis at the border, that the reason that the Senate is not passing this bill, the reason that the House of Representatives has said that this bill is dead on arrival is because they're all trying to appease Trump. So it's Trump's fault. And Joe Biden even says it. You'll see here in this quick little 10-second meme that Joe Biden even says that the reason that the border is unsecure is because of Trump. But they've been telling us, the Biden administration has been telling us for 3 years that the border is secure and that there isn't a problem at the border. Take a look at this little clip.
The border is closed. The border is secure.
The border is secure.
The only reason the border is not secure is Donald Trump.
So they've been telling us for years that the border is secure, the border is closed. And then now, the only reason that the border is not secure because of Donald Trump? No, the border was never a priority for them. So the only reason that anyone on the Democratic side was talking about the border is because they wanted money for Ukraine. Now, I told you guys before I went on a break in June from my audio podcast to get set up to do the video podcast, I told you guys that this war in Ukraine, that the Republican voters do not want another dime going to Ukraine. Republican voters do not support the war in Ukraine, and we do not want any more money going to Ukraine. So how did the border get to be part of the conversation? I want you to listen to this guy. If you don't know who this senator is, and if you don't live in Connecticut or you don't follow politics closely, you would have no idea who this guy is. He's from a very small state that neighbors New York, and he's the senator there, and his name is Chris Murphy. You got it. I'm going to show you this clip of Chris Murphy, but we're going to talk about Chris Murphy a lot here in a minute, because Ukraine is Chris Murphy's priority. Now, take a listen to what Chris Hayes says here in this clip, and then take a listen to what Chris Murphy says in this clip. Senator Chris Murphy.
The negotiation didn't have a path to citizenship. It was entirely on their terms in order to get Ukraine funding, right?
You hear that? You hear that? That it was entirely on their terms because the priority was to get Ukraine funding. So we didn't even put any pathway to citizenship in this or anything we wanted. We just threw this border part together, and who cares what's in it? We'll just call it border security and stuff. Just give them something for the border so we can get the Ukraine funding, is what Chris Hayes says.
The negotiation didn't have a path to citizenship. It was entirely on their terms in order to get Ukraine funding, right?
Well, I mean, Chris, that's been a failed play for 20 years. So
Right.
You are right that has been the Democratic strategy for 30 years, maybe. And it has failed to deliver for the people we care about most.
For the people we care about most. Now, who are the people that Senator Chris Murphy, who are the people that he cares about the most as a senator from one of the 50 states of the United States, Connecticut? Who are the people that Senator Murphy cares about the most? You're going to be surprised.
And it has failed to deliver for the people we care about most, the undocumented Americans that are in this country.
Undocumented, he calls them Americans. If they're undocumented, how are they Americans? But the part that I want you to pay attention to is the question. And I wish I would have gotten the longer clip. But the question is the most important part, because the question that Chris Hayes asked is absolutely, the answer to that question is yes, that they just cobbled together anything that they could throw together on the border because the objective was to get the Ukraine funding. And so the narrative was from the Democrats is they came back and they said that you Republicans, you told us that this is what you wanted, that you wanted the border included in this bill. And the Democrats who make that accusation against the Republicans are 100% right. That Republican leadership, they are the ones who started pushing the narrative about putting the border together with the bill. They're the ones who who started that narrative. People like Lindsey Graham, even the Speaker of the House here. I'm going to show you these clips that they were the ones that were saying. Now, when the Democrats were in charge and Nancy Pelosi was a Speaker of the House, they didn't care about the border and they were just passing Ukraine funding. We've sent Ukraine over $100 billion already. The war started in 2002, and with Republicans, Democrats were just continuing to pass Ukraine funding with no problem. They passed it in the Senate. About 15 Republicans would vote with the entire Democrat caucus, and then they'd send it to the House. Nancy Pelosi was Speaker, so she would bring it to the floor, and the entire Democratic caucus would vote on it, and you'd get, maybe 100, 130 Republicans, and it would pass, and they didn't care anything about the border. But when the Republicans won the House in 2022, and they took charge in 2023, they started listening to their constituents, and the constituents back home, when these guys went home, they told these guys, the representatives from these Republican districts, that when you go back to Washington, we don't want any more funding for Ukraine. No more funding for Ukraine. And it became like a slogan amongst the Republican electorate that why would we spend billions of dollars to protect Ukraine's border when we're allowing an invasion to go on at our border? So this is what these people were hearing when they were going back to their districts, when they were going back to their states. Their constituents were saying, why are we spending billions of dollars to defend Ukraine's border when we're not defending our border? So what these guys heard, Lindsey Graham, others, particularly Lindsey Graham, we're going to talk broadly about him, but what they heard was that if we want to get Ukraine funding, then we have to put something in for the border to secure the border. And that's how this whole narrative came about, by putting the border together with the Ukraine funding. No, you guys weren't hearing us. You need to secure our border because that's your job, and we still don't want any money going to Ukraine. That's what you guys need to understand. Take a look at this clip of Republicans, Democrats who say that this is the Republicans' idea to put the border stuff with the Ukraine funding. They're absolutely right. This was the Republicans' idea. This was, namely, the very first person that I saw pitching this was Lindsey Graham, because Lindsey Graham, his priority is Ukraine. So Lindsey Graham knew, he understood from listening to his constituents, if we want to have any hope of getting Ukraine more money and keeping this war going, then we have to give them something. And that something was some really bad bill on the border, because they don't see a problem with the border. They want the migration. Take a listen.
Any national security package has to begin with the security of our own border. We have to effect real policy change at the border, and that is a necessary condition to anything we do going forward. I have also made very clear from day one that our first condition on any national security supplemental spending package is about our own national security.
I will not help Ukraine, Taiwan, or Israel until we secure a border that's been obliterated.
We're not going to consider the other package of Israel and Ukraine aid, even though I support both of those, until and unless we deal with the border.
So you get the point that the Republicans are the ones who asked for this and put it together, but the objective was not to secure the border. The objective was to get more Ukraine funding. And now the deal has failed in the Senate with the border package. So they said that now, the facade is over. Now, if you guys don't want to vote on the package that has the border stuff in it, let's get to the real business, the real reason that we're here, and let's go ahead and pass this Ukraine funding. So we're $34.3 trillion in debt. The debt to GDP is 130%. The interest on the debt is $1 trillion annually. And the Senate is borrowing. The Senate is borrowing. They want to borrow $95 billion to send to Ukraine, Israel, and Taiwan. And there's not a single thing in this for the American people. And it's crazy. This is Lindsey Graham today. Take a listen.
Thank you. Very quickly, I'll make an opening remark now. First, Senator Kennedy and I'll ask questions in a minute. So the reason I'm late, I apologize, is that we're trying to find a way to move forward as a conference and really as a country on securing our border and helping Ukraine. To my Democratic colleagues, the bipartisan bill has many good things in it. It's inadequate to the task. I have some ideas to make it better. I would like to pursue those ideas, see if we can have more discussion about securing our border. I told people back home, Senator Durbin, that I want to help Ukraine. If you lose in Ukraine, you'll put the world in a great peril. If you don't fix your border, you're putting America in great peril. I intend to try to do both. I don't believe we have made a genuine, full-throated effort yet to secure our border. Couple ideas. The Trump-Obama years.
So this guy, you don't even need to listen to his ideas. This guy is such a sleazeball, South Carolina. Why do you keep sending this guy to the Senate? This was all his idea because he wants to get money to Ukraine. He's the one who put this idea, and they don't want to secure the border. They don't want to secure the border. Joe Biden right now has the ability as president of the United States to secure the border without any more legislation. But this is all a game so they can get the people to feel good about spending $60 billion, throwing it down the toilet in Ukraine because the funding in Ukraine is getting ready to expire. So this is all about Ukraine. And since this is all about Ukraine, that's where I want to focus the rest of this podcast and talk about Ukraine, because since that's our priority, is what it seems like if you listen to our leaders, that the priority is them and not us, then so let's talk about them. Let's talk about what is going on in Ukraine. And yesterday, Tucker Carlson did an interview with Vladimir Putin. And boy, first of all, people were so upset that he was, even doing the interview. I mean, there were people calling for this guy to be arrested under the Espionage Act and all of this for interviewing the leader of another country. It just shows you how afraid they were. And they had every reason to be afraid, because if you watch this interview, Vladimir Putin lays it all down. He starts in the 9th century. He starts in the 9th century, and then he brings you all the way up to the current day. Now, I don't want to go back to the 9th century. I don't even want to go back to 2004 and the Orange Revolution. I want to talk about where we are today. But to talk about where we are today, we do have to go back a little bit to 2014. And 2014 is when this all started. And that's what Putin says here. I want you to take a listen.
Viktor Yanukovych came to power, and how? The first time he won after President Kuchma, they organized a third round, which is not provided for in the constitution of Ukraine. This is a coup d'etat. Just imagine, someone in the United States wouldn't like the outcome.
Let me just explain what he's talking about here. So we are going to go back to the Orange Revolution, because he's talking about the Orange Revolution. So the Orange Revolution, this is a color revolution that happened in Ukraine in 2004. And it was right after an election, same thing that happens 10 years later in 2014. All of the violence and everything starts before the election, but kind of increases after the election. We'll go over all of that. But in 2004, the Orange Revolution happened right after the election. The people that were running in this election, two people, one was this guy, Viktor Yushchenko. Viktor Yushchenko, his wife is... I don't know if she's American or she was just educated here in America, but she went to the University of Chicago. I think she may be an American, but in 2004, George Bush was the president of the United States, and he backed Viktor Yushchenko over Viktor Yanukovych. So Viktor Yanukovych, he was more aligned to Russia than Viktor Yushchenko. And after the election, Viktor Yanukovych, this guy, won the election, and the people went out into the streets, Independence Square, and that's where they go in 2014. They all go into Independence Square with their orange flags, and it's called the Orange Revolution. So they have another election after that, and then after the crowd and the demands from George Bush that they have another election, and then Viktor Yushchenko, this guy, Bush's friend, becomes president after the second election. So that's what Putin is talking about. And then Viktor Yushchenko is such a bad president. He's an awful president for Ukraine that when his term was up, Viktor Yanukovych ran against him again, and then Viktor Yanukovych was elected president. He was elected president fairly because people were fed up with Bush's friend Yanukovych, and they threw him out, and they elected the guy who Putin is saying should have been president. He should have been elected in 2004, but there was a coup d'etat with the color revolution. So that's what Putin is talking about. All right, let's just go back here a little bit.
Which is not provided for in the constitution of Ukraine. This is a coup d'etat. Just imagine, someone in the United States wouldn't like the outcome.
In 2014?
No, 2004, Tucker.
Before that. No, this was before that. After President Kuchma,
Tucker really...
Viktor Yanukovych won the elections.
Tucker really, I mean, some of the questions that he asked, I was like, man, I would have loved to have been doing this interview because, yeah, I mean, you don't know about the Orange Revolution, Tucker. I was really taken back by him asking.
Provided for in the Constitution of Ukraine. This is a coup d'etat. Just imagine someone in the United States wouldn't like the outcome.
In 2014?
Before that. No, this was before that. After President Kuchma, Viktor Yanukovych won the elections. However, his opponents did not recognize that victory. The U.S. supported the opposition, and the third round was scheduled. What is this? This is a coup. The U.S. supported it, and the winner of the third round came to power. Imagine if in the U.S. something was not to someone's liking, and the third round of election, which the U.S. Constitution does not provide for, was organized. Nonetheless, it was done in Ukraine. Okay, Viktor Yushchenko, who was considered a pro-Western politician, came to power. Fine, we have built relations with him as well. He came to Moscow with visits. We visited Kiev. I visited too. We met in an informal setting. If he's pro-Western, so be it. It's fine. Let people do their job. The situation should have developed inside the independent Ukraine itself. As a result of Kuchma's leadership, things got worse and Viktor Yanukovych came to power after all.
So this is what he's saying. So things got worse under Yushchenko, and then Viktor Yanukovych came to power after all. That at the because the people didn't like, after they had the color revolution that brought Yushchenko to power, the people didn't like the way Yushchenko governed, and then Yanukovych became president after all.
Developed inside the independent Ukraine itself. As a result of Kuchma's leadership, things got worse and Viktor Yanukovych came to power after all. Maybe he wasn't the best president and politician, I don't know. I don't want to give assessments. However, the issue of the association with the EU came up. We have always been lenient to this, suit yourself. But when we read through the Treaty of Association, it turned out to be a problem for us, since we had a free trade zone and open customs borders with Ukraine, which under this association had to open its borders.
All right, so let me explain to you what Putin is talking about here. So then Viktor Yanukovych comes into power, and that at the end of Viktor Yanukovych's term, which is 2014, they are negotiating a trade deal, and they're negotiating a trade deal with the EU, which if they would have signed that trade deal, it was going to bring Ukraine in economically into the EU economically. And then the Russians were also negotiating with them at that same time a trade deal. And Putin is saying that he told Yanukovych, and Yanukovych, who's supposed to be this pro-Russian president, I mean, if you watch Oliver Stone's movie, Ukraine on Fire, Oliver Stone interviews Yanukovych in that documentary, and Yanukovych says that you know, as the president of the United States, I was looking at both of these deals, not looking at it as far as you know, whose allegiance do I have, more of Western allegiance or allegiance to Putin. I was looking at this from an economic standpoint, and what is best for the Ukrainian people is what Yanukovych says in that interview. And what Yanukovych, he at first is going to go with the deal with the EU, but Putin tells them, well, if you go with that deal with the EU, then we're going to close our borders to you, and we won't trade with you at all. And this is our counter offer. You're going to hear about the counter offer here in a moment. But that's what Putin is talking about here.
I've always been lenient to this. Maybe he wasn't the best president and politician. I don't know. I don't want to give assessments. However, the issue of the association with the EU came up. We have always been lenient to this, suit yourself. But when we read through the Treaty of Association, it turned out to be a problem for us, since we had a free trade zone and open customs borders with Ukraine, which under this association had to open its borders for Europe, which would have led to flooding of our market. We said, no, this is not going to work. We shall.
So do you understand what Putin's saying? He's saying that if you do the deal with the EU, then we have to close our borders to you because we don't want our markets to be flooded with EU goods. We make our own products here. So that's why he was saying that we're going to have to close the border. So this is all the stuff that Yanukovych had to consider.
It turned out to be a problem for us, since we had a free trade zone and open customs borders with Ukraine, which under this association had to open its borders for Europe, which would have led to flooding of our market. We said, no, this is not going to work. We shall close our borders with Ukraine then. The customs borders, that is. Yanukovych started to calculate how much Ukraine was going to gain, how much to lose, and said to his European partners, I need more time to think before signing.
That's exactly what happened.
The moment he said that, the opposition began to take destructive steps, which were supported by the West.
Absolutely. Everything that Putin says right there is exactly what happened. I want you to listen to George Soros here tell the exact same story that you just heard Putin tell, but from a different point of view, because this man had a lot to do, and his group, Open Society, had a lot to do with what happened in 2014. Take a listen to George Soros.
Greece resembles, has many similarities to the old Ukraine. But there is what I call a new Ukraine, which is determined to be to get rid of all the rottenness of the old Ukraine.
All right, so he's making George Soros. First of all, is making a He's distinguishing between the old Ukraine and the new Ukraine. That's what you hear him say that over and over again. The old Ukraine and the new Ukraine, okay? So the person who's interviewing him is Christina Freeland. Christina Freeland is the current deputy prime minister of Canada. She's what's his name? Justin Trudeau's number 2. So Soros is talking about the old Ukraine versus the new Ukraine, and listen to Freeland's question, and he elaborates and then tells the exact same story that Putin just told.
And that's the new Ukraine that Europe has difficulty in recognizing. And so that's why they treat Ukraine like the old Ukraine, or like Greece.
And what's the difference? I mean, what makes the new Ukraine new?
Well, it's really basically the rise of civil society that spontaneously.
So he says spontaneously. And he emphasizes spontaneously. He says it again. We'll see how much further we go into this clip, but he says it again later. He emphasizes spontaneously. He wants you to think that this is spontaneous. There is nothing spontaneous about what happens and what he's talking about, but he emphasizes spontaneous.
Basically, the rise of civil society that spontaneously rebelled against a continuation when the association agreement was offered, and then.
So he's talking about the trade deal, the same trade deal that Putin was talking about. He says the association agreement. He's talking about the trade deal with the EU that Yanukovych was negotiating with the EU, the same one that Putin says, if you sign that deal, we're going to shut down our borders because we don't want European goods flooding our market. That's the deal that Soros is talking about here, that the negotiation of this deal and what happened after the negotiation of this deal was the launch of the new Ukraine.
Agreement was offered, and then Putin outbid the European Union, which wasn't very difficult.
The Putin outbid the European Union. But this is business. Yanukovych told Oliver Stone and Ukraine on Fire that I'm looking at the deals that the European Union is offering. I'm looking at the deal that Russia is offering. I'm considering the fact that if we make the deal with the EU, that Russia's going to shut their borders, which they have every right to do. Yanukovych considered all of that, and he says the better deal is to make the deal with Russia. And even George Soros says here that Putin outbid the EU, which wasn't difficult to do because the EU was offering a crappy deal.
The association agreement was offered, and then Putin outbid the European Union, which wasn't very difficult, and offered $15 billion. And Yanukovych then made a deal with Putin, and the people then rebelled. They went to Maidan and they protested, and Putin said to Yanukovych.
All right, so we'll stop there. So what happened was, this is what Putin says. Let's go back to Putin here. And let's listen to him, so he can tell you exactly. Listen again.
The customs borders, that is. Yanukovych started to calculate how much Ukraine was going to gain, how much to lose, and said to his European partners, I need more time to think before signing. The moment he said that, the opposition began to take destructive steps, which...
So what is Putin talking about? The moment that Yanukovych started to negotiate with Russia on this trade deal, that the opposition took destructive steps. It's the same thing that George Soros is talking about when he says that once Yanukovych made the deal, that the people hit the streets and rebelled. And it wasn't spontaneous that they hit the streets and rebelled, and they returned and they went to the Maidan and they started protesting. All of this was organized by open society. It was not spontaneous, and it wasn't only organized by open society. This clown right here, Chris Murphy and John McCain went to Ukraine and they rallied the people to come down. This wasn't spontaneous at all, George Soros. You had 2 American senators and others in Ukraine rallying the people there at Maidan, getting them all worked up to demonstrate against President Yanukovych because he was rejecting the EU deal and accepting the deal from Russia. The Americans and open society are the ones who brought the people to the square. It was not spontaneous. Take a listen.
The European Union cut off trade talks with Ukraine today, saying the former Soviet republic's terms have, quote, no grounds in reality. That development fired up protesters in the capital city of Kiev, who were joined this afternoon by Republican Senator John McCain of Arizona and Democrat.
Look at this. Look at Chris Murphy. Look at John McCain, War McCain. Look at Klitschko. This is Klitschko. Klitschko is the current mayor of Kiev. Klitschko. This guy, he's a boxer. Klitschko. So they're there with Klitschko, and they are rallying the people to protest against the trade deal. Why are we meddling? Why is Chris Murphy and John McCain over there meddling in their business? This is exactly what Putin told Tucker last night that they did. That as soon as the trade deal started to fall apart, that these guys went over there and started rallying people with Open Society. So Open Society had they had all the people already organized. Sorry. They had all the people already organized because George Soros, let me listen to what George Soros says here.
Was that George civil society in action? You've been working on helping to build civil society, trying to build it, often frustrated in the former Soviet Union, in the Soviet Union. I know I first met you in Ukraine in 1990 when you began those efforts. There were many years, I think, when it seemed it was all useless. Does it say something to you, teach you something about open society, civil society building?
Well, yes, because basically, in many ways, I set up the foundation in Ukraine in 1990.
So 1990 is when George Soros set up the foundation in Ukraine. So what he's talking about, setting up the foundation, organizing. He had already organized the people and knew how to rally the people and get the people to respond at a minute's notice because they have the organization through Open Society because they've been there since the 1990s. So as soon as this trade deal broke down, then Open Society got the people to rally and come to Ukraine. And then you have senators
in the capital city of Kiev. This afternoon by Republican Senator John McCain of Arizona and Democrat Chris Murphy of Connecticut. They told the crowd of more than 200,000 that Americans support their resistance. Protesters want closer ties to Europe, not Russia.
Okay. So why are you over there meddling? Chris Murphy and John McCain.
2 U.S. senators made an appearance in Kiev this weekend to rally tens of thousands of protesters who want to see Ukraine sign a trade deal with the European Union. Senators John McCain of Arizona and Chris Murphy of Connecticut also warned top country officials that there is broad support within the U.S. Senate to officially sanction individuals responsible for violence against protesters if authorities use such.
Pay close attention to this. This was long before any violence had set off there in Maidan. Up until this point, everything's peaceful. The demonstrators are there at Independence Square. They have every right to be there to demonstrate against this trade deal. If they don't want the trade deal with Russia and want closer ties to the EU, they have every right to be there. There's no violence. Why would you even bring that up, John McCain and Chris Murphy, that if there's violence, then, then we're going to have to sanction the Ukrainian government? They were already planning on what they were going to do.
And Chris Murphy of Connecticut also warned top country officials that there is broad support within the U.S. Senate to officially sanction individuals responsible for violence against protesters if authorities use such force.
If authorities use such force. There was no violence. There was no reason to even talk about it. Why would Yanukovych use violence against the protesters? Why? There's no need to use violence against the protesters. They have every right to demonstrate. But why are they putting that in there? Because this is what they use.
Responsible for violence against protesters if authorities use such force.
I have introduced a resolution in the United States Senate that contemplates sanctions should there be violence on the square.
The senator's appearance contributed to a growing belief among protesters that the U.S. is behind them and against current President Viktor Yanukovych. But it's unclear whether such appearances will expedite the movement's demands.
So the demonstrations were peaceful. There was no violence. And then the Nazis came in. And this is another portion of the Putin interview with Tucker yesterday, where he talks about his goals of denazifying Ukraine. Take a listen to this.
It was they who started the war in 2014. Our goal is to stop this war. And we did not start this war in 2022. This is an attempt to stop it.
Do you think you've stopped it now? I mean, have you achieved your aims?
No, we haven't achieved our aims yet, because one of them is denazification. This means the prohibition of all kinds of neo-Nazi movements. This is one of the problems that we discussed during the negotiation process, which ended in Istanbul early this year.
So denazification is what Putin is saying. What is he talking about, denazification? Well, this shouldn't come to a surprise to anyone, denazification. Because the United States government has known that Ukraine has had a Nazi problem for a long time. Now, if you look at the date on this article, this is a Bloomberg article. Let's get it up here for you. What does it say? Ukraine's neo-Nazis won't get U.S. money. Look at the date on this, June 12, 2015. So this is after the coup d'etat, when the Nazis take control of Ukraine. And John Conyers was not hearing it. Representative John Conyers of Michigan was blocking any funds from going to Ukraine because they were Nazis. And they knew that they were Nazis. Get this up. Did I delete that screenshot? Hold on, I gotta find this. What's his name? God, I can't believe that I'm drawing blank on this congressman's name. Okay, so this is the tweet that I was looking for. And the Congressman Ro Connor tweeted this out. I don't know, the date here is 2018, 5/18. It's a little fuzzy because he deleted this tweet. And it took me a moment to find it, but if you'll see here, it says, ever since the Orange Revolution began under President Bush, the U.S. has been complicit in the rehabilitation and spread of neo-Nazis in Ukraine. This is exactly what Putin said last night. He says with Ro Khanna, Democratic congressman, tweeted and then deleted the tweet. Ever since the Orange Revolution under President Bush, the U.S. has been complicit in rehabilitation and the spread of neo-Nazis in Ukraine. Enough is enough. Our government must stand up to the Azov Battalion and other fascist groups. And there were a lot of other fascist groups. So the U.S. Congress knew that there was a Nazi problem in Ukraine. And they had a policy not to send them money and not to fund them. And this policy was changed. I'm going to show you this. I'm going to have to probably pick this up in the next podcast because I have so much more people that I still need to tell you guys. I didn't even scratch the surface of this. But if you look at the date here, this is January 14th, 2016. January 14th, 2016. Trump is president-elect. Trump doesn't get sworn in for another 6 days. This is the week before Trump is sworn in. He's president-elect, and Congress changes that foreign policy. Congress has removed a ban on funding of neo-Nazis and their year-end spending. And this is a change that they make a week before Trump is sworn in as president. People. I didn't even scratch the surface of what I want to tell you guys about Ukraine. Since Ukraine is our priority, we need to talk about Ukraine. So since I have a lot more to share with you, we'll pick this up in the next podcast. Hold on. trying to get the music together so I can play us out. All right, folks, there we go.